This is NHL Wraparound's playoff math and deadline strategies, an 8-part series with snapshots of all 32 teams coming out of the Olympic break and what their futures may hold in store. This is the Central Division, Part 2, and we will be talking about Nashville, Chicago, Winnipeg, and St. Louis in this show. The way we do this is we're going to give you the standings first of the teams, talk about their schedule, if applicable, in terms of any key games, whether or not they can get back into the playoff race, personnel and or injury notes, and then Neil's take on what strategies the general managers should take given their current standing. So we're going to start, Neil, with the Nashville Predators. And this is a team that has clawed their way back into playoff contention. They are fourth in the wild card, fifth in the Central, 59 points, 4 points behind the Anaheim Ducks for wild card 2. They have played one more game than has Anaheim. They have road trips of 5 and 6 games coming up. And they're 11, 12, and 4 on the road this year. Key games on their schedule, 3 with San Jose, 2 are at home. Then they have home and road games with Seattle and Anaheim, and 2 against the Los Angeles Kings. So those will be teams that they will be competing for should they be able to get into wild card position. Barry Trotz, still the general manager there. They're on the outside looking in, but they've made progress during the course of this season. How do you want to steer this ship?
You know, the future is everything to the Nashville Predators. And when Barry Trotz took over, he took over a team that didn't have a lot going for it because there had been so many deals made to keep them in the playoffs for so long. They've had a very successful and long playoff run in Nashville. He brought in some guys to try to get them through this period of time, and it didn't work last season when he brought those guys in. Some big names, Stamkos, Marchessault, and, of course, Brady Shea on defense. But that didn't bolster them where they needed to go. They're probably out of it again this year. I can't see them catching Anaheim. I can't see them all of a sudden turning it on and having a great run here. So everything that I think that Barry Trotz and or his successor do now will be pointed towards the future.
They've got a lot of middle 6, bottom 6 forwards that are UFAs. Eric Haula, Cole Smith, Michael McCarron, Michael Bunting, Tyson Yost, and defenseman Nick Blankenberg also among that list. But there's also been talk that the team may look to move Stamkos, and I would think Marchessault has to be on that list also, because there are certainly teams out there that are going to be looking for a little bit of offensive pop, and maybe these are the types of players that can bring back assets for the future.
Absolutely. That's what they'll be doing. I would be surprised if Steven Stamkos doesn't end up on one of these contenders at some point before the deadline. And you might be saying the same thing with Marchessault. And it could very well be that Marchessault could end up back in Vegas. You know how Vegas is about going after it every year. So, yeah, these are trade chips that they're going to have to use to bolster their future hopes.
In Chicago, I think this is a very interesting time for Kyle Davidson. The Blackhawks are 10 points out of a spot. Doesn't look like they're going to be able to get in once again. They do have road trips of 5, 4, and 3 games. Not too much Olympic impact. Only Teuvo Teravainen playing for Team Finland. It's the only player from the Blackhawks to go over to Italy. They've got several UFAs, including their captain, Nick Foligno, assistant captain, Jason Dickinson, Ilya Mikheyev, Sam Lafferty, and on defense, Connor Murphy, longstanding Blackhawk, and also Mark Grzelcyk. So how do you see Davidson looking to move here with a lot of his leadership group on expiring contracts?
Well, once again, just like with Nashville, Chicago's out of it. Let's face it. I mean, they had a real good run early under new coach Jeff Blashill, who did a great job and is continuing to do, I think, a good job. However, they're not going to make the playoffs this year. They're long out of it. They're going to have to decide whether there's any takers for their captain, Nick Foligno. Is there any takers for a veteran defenseman like Connor Murphy somewhere? We've talked about people needing depth defensemen, needing extras. Don't be surprised if he can't get something for Connor Murphy on one of these contending teams. But obviously, Chicago's got to stay with whatever their plan is for the future and keep building towards the future because the present isn't here yet.
How do you assess the involvement of Connor Bedard this year in terms of his ability to continue to grow and lead and impact this team going forward? And I think the same can be said for Frank Nazar.
Yeah, I think with Connor Bedard, it must be frustrating. I think this is year 3 for Connor Bedard and his 3 years out of the playoffs. He has gotten 23 goals and 30 assists for 53 points this year. He's a very respectable -2. He's got 143 shots on net. So his offensive prowess is coming out not nearly the way that you would have hoped for what was supposedly a generational player. But I think he's improved under Jeff Blashill, and he will continue to improve as time goes on. You just got to hope that he doesn't get too frustrated with the organization.
So besides Bedard and maybe Nazar, who signed that big contract a year ago, anybody else that you're looking at on this team to really help in the growth process?
I think that Artem Leshinov, the defenseman, is a bright future for them. Definitely Bedard, Nazar, and Leshinov are their future. Bertuzzi's a good player for now. They got Burakovsky in there. Donato's been a good contributor, but I think their future really hangs on those 3 guys. That's going to be the core if they're going to have success in the future.
A team that was supposed to have their future right now, the defending President's Trophy winning Winnipeg Jets. And this year has just been a nightmare from the get-go. They're 11 points out of a playoff spot coming out of the break. They have an 8-game homestand in early March. And the trade deadline is March the 6th. So I can't think that homestand is going to have that much of an impact. And then you toss onto this that their top defenseman, Josh Morrissey, could not play after the opening game of the Olympics, getting hurt against the Czechs. This team also has several UFAs, Gustav Nyquist, Jonathan Toews, who we'll get to in a second, Tanner Pearson, and on defense, Chen, Colin Miller, and Logan Stanley, who may bring in a pretty good haul because he's being sought after by a lot of teams. Also, goaltender Eric Comrie. So for Kevin Cheveldayoff, who I believe signed hometown hero Jonathan Toews as maybe what was expected to be a final piece to take their another run for the cup, it's gone in the opposite direction. So what is his strategy going forward with the likelihood this team is not going to even make the playoffs this year?
I'm pretty sure they're not going to make the playoffs, and that's sad for Kevin Cheveldayoff because I think he does a remarkable job there in Winnipeg as the general manager. But he's going to have to flip the script now and go the opposite way. And instead of adding at the deadline to try to take that run for the cup, they're going to have to sell off some pieces and try to retool when the offseason comes. So people that are free agents, for example, Jonathan Toews, who has not had a successful season for the Winnipeg Jets as far as helping them reach another level. He's a -17 at this point in the season. He could go to a playoff team and really help with his leadership, his experience. Gustav Nyquist is a guy that could help people in the playoffs. And certainly you said it, Logan Stanley, the big, strong defenseman, who's got 9 goals and 9 assists and 18 points this season, could help a team. So I would think that for the first time in a long time, Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to have to go the opposite route and try to grab some future or some other pieces that perhaps you can use to trade to get better pieces for now. Because don't forget, Scheifele, Connor, Velarde, Morrissey, Iafallo, Niederreiter, Perfetti, as well as, of course, the histrionics of their goaltending, Hellebuck, who was the MVP of the league last year and 3-time Vezina Trophy winner. These guys are not going to want to be on a rebuild. They're going to want to be at the most on something maybe being retooled and putting this season in the rearview mirror.
What do you do if you're Doug Armstrong and the St. Louis Blues? Now, he will be turning over the GM reins to Alex Steen the end of this season. He will stay on for 3 more years as president of hockey operations. They're long out of the playoff picture, so there's no use talking about their schedule at all. They've got 3 UFAs, Matthew Joseph, Oscar Sundqvist, Robbie Fabry. You talk about working with a pretty empty canvas. Steen is coming in here, and there is not a lot in the cupboard.
No, there's not. And there's not a lot of good things to say, a lot of bright spots. I mean, they made the playoffs last year inexplicably. Nobody thought they were going to, and they did end up doing that. Jim Montgomery was hired very early in that season last year. Drew Bannister was let go, and Jim Montgomery turned that team into a playoff team. And they did very well in the first round against Winnipeg, even though they lost. But there is not a lot here with this team. You have some pieces like Braden Shen that are really well liked around the league, even though he's a minus 25. You've got some real good players like Jordan Cairo, Robert Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich. These are all good players. Philip Broberg that they stole from the Edmonton Oilers, and Dylan Holloway. But cupboard is bare. Colton Parayko's a great, big, huge defenseman for them. We saw how well he played for Team Canada when he's on a good team. He's a good piece. But Alex Steen is going to have to take over for Doug Armstrong and continue to rebuild the organization.
That will wrap up this edition of NHL Wraparound's Playoff Math and Deadline Strategies. Look out for all 8 of our shows, taking a look at all 32 teams around the NHL as they exit the Olympic break.